The story begins in an upscale delivery room where a woman, soon to give birth, nonchalantly browses through a magazine. Her patience finally depleted, she shouted at the nurses, demanding they expedite the child's delivery, all the while her eyes never left the magazine she was reading. Abruptly, the sound of a baby crying reverberated throughout the area, prompting a staff member to hurriedly approach and offer congratulations to the new grandfather. Then everyone began to offer their congratulations to Miss Liu, who expressed her gratitude to her guests for their kindness. He then inquired of a maid regarding Shaquin's whereabouts, to which she informed him that the young master was occupied with matters on earth. The boy's grandfather seethed with anger over his son's failure to appear, labeling him an utter failure in his responsibilities. Suddenly, an eerie scream echoed from within the delivery room, causing alarm among those waiting outside. Concerned by the unfolding events, Missouri Liu rose to her feet, her expression one of confusion and concern as she demanded to know the nature of the chaos inside. In the room, the brightness of the light shining directly in front of her left the mother in a state of shock. As the grandfather and his men entered the room, they were instantly immobilized, as if turned to stone. A newborn, enveloped in yellow lightning, radiated light and appeared to thoroughly enjoy the experience. The infant believed it was beyond anyone's imagination that a commoner could be reborn into such a distinguished family and possess an awakened, almost divine sense. A notification popped up on the system screen, indicating that the lightning-type divine sense was now active at a C-level power. The grandfather was taken aback as he realized his newborn grandson possessed a power that had always eluded him. As the cane clattered to the ground, the grandfather loudly proclaimed the unique and inherent divine intuition that his grandson held. The grandfather lifted his grandson high into the air, his face beaming with pride as he proclaimed that the Liu clan had at last given rise to a prodigy, the likes of which only appeared once in a generation. The infant believed he could seize this opportunity to strip the clan of everything and ensure his father would never reincarnate. The maids observed that the young master was already smiling and hadn't shed a single tear, suggesting he was destined for nobility. The elder vowed to harness the clan's entire strength to nurture the boy. The infant, who is central to our story, felt as if the past 6 months since his abduction by the vile individual were akin to a dream. A month into his new life, his mother consumed a unique tonic, a gift from one of her maids. Upon consuming the tonic, her body began to emanate a radiant golden light. He acquired the power of accelerated growth, advancing to D level while still an embryo. He pondered over the undeniable gap in power between the common folk and the clans, realizing that he had attained a status many would dare deadly challenges to achieve. The protagonist is puzzled by the nature of the ability, noting its uniqueness due to the absence of any documented instances of accelerated growth. 2 months after the initial incident, he encountered a severe absorption crisis stemming from the original embryo of the mother, yet he was compensated for this ordeal. With his accelerated growth, he consumed the original embryo, thereby gaining its inherent lightning-type divine sense. His excitement was palpable upon discovering that he possessed a lightning-type divine sense, a rare and coveted elemental ability. The hero resolved to harness the finest resources available to his family, aiming to fortify himself and gain greater strength. 3 months had passed, and his divine sense, characterized by the force of lightning, had advanced to the intermediate level of power. High heels and women's underwear were strewn across the floor of his mother's bedroom. On the bed, several pairs of feet were intertwined, suggesting a comfortable closeness. The woman was observed alongside a blonde man while she was still pregnant with her son. The lover inquired whether fear was absent in her heart, to which the lady responded, revealing her marriage was merely a political arrangement. In the womb, the unborn child was privy to the man's doubts about his fatherhood, even as his mother merely requested additional support. The protagonist expressed frustration that the surrounding chaos was disrupting his ability to absorb energy effectively. Consequently, he discharged a considerable amount of energy suddenly, which caused her to express discomfort, claiming it scorched her internally. By the time he was 6 months old, his abilities had reached the peak of level D, and he had come to understand his mother's physical condition. A serene and attractive face was observed. The man gazes at the woman's swelling belly, filled with curiosity about when the troublesome child will finally arrive. From within the womb, the main character opened his eyes and directed a look of intense hatred toward his father. In his gaze, he mirrored the man's visage and labeled him a contemptible mongrel. During a flashback, the scene reveals a young man in his previous life receiving warnings about dreadful creatures. One of his wounded allies urged Brother Liu to escape the area swiftly. In the scene, his friend, overwhelmed and defeated, calls out desperately for assistance, yet the young man merely stands by, observing the situation unfold. Tragically, the young man could only watch as his friend was consumed by a monstrous creature. With a sinister grin, the betrayer commanded his followers to sacrifice to the creature, thereby creating the spirit core. A malicious smirk spread across the man's face as he observed his victim on the brink of defeat. Just then, the young man spotted a massive spike hurtling towards him, poised to strike. His previous ally ruthlessly impaled him with a massive branch, hoisting him high into the air. The hero gazed at the injury on his chest, stunned by the treachery he had recently endured. The villain burst into uncontrollable laughter, finding amusement in his adversary's moment of defeat. He ridiculed him, suggesting that such consequences were typical for those who overestimated their abilities. As he was cast aside, the young man charged the other with deception, claiming he was used merely to satiate the creatures. As he approached his final moments, his sole concern centered on the future well-being of his younger sisters. He recalled the moment he bid farewell to one of them, assuring that his return would be swift. Shortly thereafter, his former self seized a weapon and prepared to depart on a mission. The door shut behind them, leaving the three young girls by themselves, eagerly anticipating their brother's return. Gazing at the moon through the window, the girls speculated about the return of their elder brother. In the womb of Prem C, the unborn child was consumed by anger and vowed to seek vengeance against the one responsible for separating him from his sisters. Harnessing his strength, the unborn child readied itself to strike its father, who stood just beyond its reach. Suddenly, the small figure managed to deliver a forceful punch directly to the traitor's face, taking him entirely off guard. The force of the impact propelled the man through the air, while the mother reeled from the shock of the kick she experienced. The boy's father collapsed onto the ground, overwhelmed by excruciating pain, bewildered by the sudden affliction. The woman expressed her frustration, noting that the troublesome child had begun to misbehave even before making his entrance into the world. The grandfather instructed the nurse to investigate the occurrences within the room. The narrative revealed that the young master possessed an extraordinary talent, which led to his accelerated development. Startled, she disclosed that the baby was on the verge of being born as the mother was entering labor. The boy expressed sorrow over the fact that in his previous life, his maximum attainment was at the peak DD level, and currently he was nearing a significant breakthrough. Consumed by excruciating pain, the mother urgently shouted for someone to summon the most skilled delivery team without delay. Upon reaching the age of 1 month, the Liu family hosted a lavish celebration banquet in his honor. A number of distinguished families from southern Java made their arrival, each bearing gifts to honor the celebration of the newborn. At the gathering, the grandfather observed a violin performance, accompanied by a maid. At the same time, the infant hero of the story was peacefully nestled in the embrace of a maid. A guest offered congratulations to Master Leo for the birth of his grandson, yet the elder appeared to be preoccupied, lost deep in his thoughts. A visitor offers congratulations to the father of the boy, while the infant gazes intently at the man responsible for his defeat in a previous life. Upon spotting the foe responsible for his separation from his sisters, he was overwhelmed with fury and silently vowed to seek vengeance. In his recollections, he vividly saw his younger sisters brimming with excitement over a massive birthday cake. In his previous existence, he found himself on a call with Brother Chin, who expressed his displeasure about his tardiness for a mission. The young man offered his apologies, and the traitor considered that his decision to hire him might have been influenced by the rumors of the young man's financial needs. The older man suggested that the younger man should think more critically. Grateful for the employment chance, the younger man expressed his appreciation. The small piece of cake on the table was eagerly awaited by his sisters. The older brother bid farewell to one of his companions, assuring them that although he had secured employment, he would return before long. He seized his weapon from within the bag and readied himself to exit the house. As the door shut, the trio of young girls found themselves alone, filled with anxious anticipation for his return. As they gazed out the window, the girls observed the moon, eagerly anticipating the return of their beloved brother. In a different location, a man neared a radiant portal situated at the heart of a shadowy forest. The same individual who had been smoking a cigarette was also the one offering congratulations to young Master G at the party. Young Master G seemed to be the leader of the perilous operation. Accompanied by his subordinates, young Master G inquired about the progress of the mission. The man conveyed to him that they had been inside for some time, suggesting that the beast was likely satiated by now. Young Master G commended old Chen, noting his excellent upbringing and consistent efficiency. He then turned to his female companion, telling her that their visit was solely for her before they departed. The woman dismissively scoffed, labeling him as merely another unworthy individual from the G family attempting to ascend the social ladder. As they reached their decision, the traitors moved toward the portal, eager to depart from the barren area. At the same time, a companion of the hero alerted him to the presence of a formidable creature lurking close by. The revelation that a survivor still exists catches the young master off guard, necessitating additional provisions for the medicinal concoction. Old Chen expressed his confusion about the feasibility of the situation, given that they were merely D-level soldiers. Out of nowhere, a deafening sound captured the attention of everyone, causing them to turn their heads toward the source of the noise. The leader of the group surveyed the situation with a grave expression. Shortly thereafter, it became apparent to them that one of the creatures bore a recent injury on its leg. The creature fixed its menacing stare on the lone hero, standing in the midst of the barren landscape. Wearied and wounded, the young man remained steadfast, poised for the concluding confrontation. At that moment, one of the traitors made a slow approach. Young Master G insisted on discovering the origin of the object and questioned its audacity in harming his creature. When young Master G caught sight of the survivor, he was taken aback and referred to him as Yi Chen. The young man spun around and shouted toward Brother Chen, confused about the unfolding events. As the enemies scattered in retreat, Yi Chen's friend inquired whether he had brought backup. In that instant, the infant resolved to seek revenge for the long-standing family conflict. He stretched out his arms and cooed softly, capturing the traitor's focused attention. Struggling for words, the man stammered as he attempted to decipher the baby's desires. The father of the boy expressed that his son's desire to be held was the most significant honor he had ever experienced. He lifted the baby, expressing his gratitude for the reward as the little one feigned tears. Upon being held by the man, the small one began to emit a yellow energy. He unleashed his lightning-based abilities, delivering a severe shock to his adversary. The traitor's body writhed in agony as an electric charge surged through him. Shocked, he inadvertently let the baby slip from his grasp, causing the infant to tumble harshly onto the floor of the mansion. The sudden noise at the party caught the attention of the women, causing them to turn their heads in its direction. The musicians halted their performance, taken aback by the uproar around them. The boy's grandfather observed everything with a grave expression. Upon witnessing the event, the boy's parents were taken aback, their astonishment evident in their expressions. Upon noticing the young hero lying on the ground, the elderly man recognized his error. The baby began to cry loudly, putting on a show to deceive everyone around. In the midst of the crisis, the traitor was overwhelmed with panic, his body breaking out in a cold sweat as fear gripped him about the potential consequences. Enraged, the grandfather scolded the man for his audacity in letting the Liu family's prized possession fall to the ground. In a display of cowardice, he flung himself to the ground, vehemently denying his involvement and insisting that the young master had acted independently. The father of the baby, disbelieving the man's words, delivered a harsh kick and derided him by labeling him as a dog. The force of the kick propels the man through the air, causing him to crash heavily onto the floor of the mansion. He began to bawl, pleading with his master for mercy. He vowed he would never harm the child and presented his treasures as a remedy to mend the boy's injuries from the fall. The child's father appeared to be amused by the situation, offering a taunting smile. The master commanded that the man be taken outside and subjected to a severe beating. The traitor expressed his gratitude for the punishment as the maid lifted the baby up again. Cradled in the woman's arms, the young protagonist's face twisted into a wicked, contented smirk, pleased with the outcome. The adversary, sporting a bruised forehead, gazed in confusion, unable to comprehend the events that had just transpired. The young child kept up a loud wail, maintaining an impeccable facade before all who watched. The aged merchant was once more struck with such surprise that tears began to stream down his face anew. The grandfather instructed the maid to escort the young master indoors to ascertain whether he sustained any injuries from his fall. The elder reprimanded his son, emphasizing that their family's prestigious status had no room for someone as unproductive as he described. Displaying clear contempt, the family patriarch spun around and stormed out of the party, overwhelmed with fury about the entire debacle. The words of the elderly man sparked fury in the boy's father, who gripped his glass with intense force. He broke the glass cup using only his hands. The host spun around and forcefully struck the traitor's face with a powerful kick. Shortly thereafter, he delivers another kick and commands that the man be hauled outdoors to be given to the guard dogs as food. As he pleaded for mercy, the guards seized him, indifferent to his anguish. The host instructed the guests to keep the party going, while the baby contemplated methods of gaining more power. The doctor conducted an examination on the child, noting that he possessed an impressive physique and was in excellent health. The grandfather expressed joy and relief, celebrating the fact that his grandson was unharmed and in excellent health. The boy's primary concern at this moment was to locate his 3 sisters from whom he had been separated. He was required to mature swiftly in order to relocate and capture the essence of the woman. The infant began wailing, signaling its need for milk and the attention of a doctor. Upon his command, the elder directed them to summon his daughter-in-law so she could nurse him and administer additional spiritual remedies. The boy's mother expressed her frustration, mentioning that she had just fed her son and was already feeling completely worn out. The head of the family emphasized that she needed to exert great effort for the prosperity of the clan and the welfare of her son. Reluctantly, the woman removed her coat and got ready to feed her baby again. As the small child waited to be fed, he began to cry, opening his mouth wide in anticipation of his mother's nourishment. The mother lifted her son and gazed at him, her eyes tinged with red. As she began to breastfeed her baby, she expressed frustration that the little rascal was sucking excessively hard. Noticing his daughter-in-law's growing frailty, the grandfather instructed the family to prepare a tonic soup for her. Shortly thereafter, the scene depicted the infant enjoying a warm bath in a hot spring, accompanied by his mother. The woman expressed her frustration, suggesting that his persistent negativity might be due to some unresolved debt she owed him from a previous life. 3 months had passed, and the baby was now energetically crawling all over the house, his abilities having escalated to that of sea level. In his previous existence, he spent a year progressing from the elementary D level to the intermediate tier. During that period, he engaged in numerous perilous assignments through portals and endured a multitude of injuries. He progressed from the elementary C level to intermediate within 3 months by consuming milk. At a family gathering, the young protagonists made their way on all fours toward the central dining table. Enraged, the grandfather voiced his displeasure about the negligence of someone who failed to supervise the young master, allowing him to roam freely. The maid expressed her apologies, explaining that the boy moved so swiftly on all fours that she struggled to keep pace with him. The father of the baby humorously suggested that his son was probably craving some milk once more, while the mother appeared visibly weary. She expressed her frustration about the boy weighing on her chest for 3 months, emphasizing her urgent need for a respite. The youngest believed that there was no time to waste. He felt compelled to continually grow stronger. Unexpectedly, the infant rose to stand independently for the very first time. The sight that unfolded before the grandfather and the butler left them utterly astonished. As the boy began to walk toward his mother, she watched him with a startled expression. The small child leaped onto his mother, prompting her to shout in desperation for a chance to eat her meal undisturbed. The maid was taken aback, observing with surprise that the young master was up and moving about the room unaided. The butler observed that the boy possessed a remarkable, almost celestial constitution, noting that his development was extraordinary. The grandfather watched his grandson, who was already able to stand, with a sense of pride and joy. He mentioned that the family traditions dictated it was time for the boy to choose a personal servant. In a dimly lit area, the elder inquired about the outcomes, to which a guard responded that merely 2 remained. Cradled by his mother, the protagonist was brought to a makeshift arena where the test would take place. His gaze is intensely fixed on the scene before him when he abruptly identifies one of the candidates, a recognition that leaves him in a state of shock. In a small, confined cell, a young girl, noticeable for her white hair, adopted a defensive posture, her expression one of evident fear. A blonde girl on the opposite side surged ahead, her shouts filling the air as she aimed to overpower her adversary in the arena. Taken aback, the infant pondered why she was present, and his body started to emit a powerful glow. He then unleashed his lightning-type power, striking one of the girls engaged in the fight. The shock's impact propelled the blonde girl through the air, causing her to land heavily on the ground where she was immediately rendered unconscious. Seizing the opportunity, the girl with white hair leaped onto the bread. Immediately, the girl seized the bread and began to eat it voraciously, situated at the center of the cell. The protagonist's mother's hair was wildly disheveled, and in a state of panic, the protagonist desperately hoped that their unusual appearance hadn't drawn any suspicious glances. The grandfather chuckled, remarking that his grandson possessed a far stronger fighting spirit than the boy's father ever did. The boy finds his youth advantageous, as it often leads adults to concoct various excuses on his behalf. The elder determined that the young girl would serve as a servant, and commanded that she be cleansed and instructed in proper etiquette. The young child ate voraciously, seemingly oblivious to her surroundings. The baby in the crib, beaming with joy, appeared to summon his new caretaker with a gleeful expression. At that moment, the butler revealed her role as a death servant, tasked with the protection of the young master. The small girl with white hair merely nodded, resigning herself to her newfound destiny. He also insists that she must adhere to the master's guidance and practice martial arts during his periods of rest. Following this decision, the young maid proceeded to the baby's room to begin her duties in her new role. When he arrived, the boy shouted to her, and pointing with a broad, excited smile, gestured towards himself. The girl's demeanor shifted dramatically as she drew a knife, her face contorting into an expression laden with hatred and a thirst for vengeance. In a state of panic, the baby attempts to speak, yet finds himself unable due to his underdeveloped vocal cords. She declared her intention to exact revenge for her older brother's death immediately. The young girl hoisted the weapon, poised to strike at the small child resting in the crib. The servant swiftly thrust the knife forward, aiming at her unsuspecting victim with lethal intent. With remarkable agility, the boy evaded the incoming blow and leapt from the crib. He hit the floor, a silhouette of energy outlining his form, catching the girl off guard with astonishment. Suddenly, the baby materialized next to her, rendering her utterly astonished and unable to speak. Without warning, a green aura began to emanate from the girl as she readied herself for battle. The protagonist's face contorts in surprise upon discovering that the girl possesses a wind-type divine sense. In a sudden burst of action, she unleashes her wind power against him, only for the baby to counter effectively using his lightning abilities. The collision of the two energies filled the room with a brilliant display of vibrant and intense colors. He believes that simultaneously wielding his dual abilities overwhelms his infant form. He conceived a clever plan to untangle the complexities of the situation. The main character gestured and deployed his thunder divine sense, though he kept its power to a minimal level. Suddenly, a tiny bolt of lightning struck the girl. The sudden shock immobilizes her momentarily, causing her to collapse onto the floor, her movements hindered. The young child appeared comforted by the outcome, yet was evidently exhausted from the exertion. As the servant lay on the floor, a sensation of electricity continued to pulse through her entire body. He cautiously moved closer and made contact with the sharp edge of the blade. The young child intentionally sliced his finger, causing a single drop of blood to emerge at the tip. He then wrote a message on the floor using his own blood, intending for her to see it. He believed it was fortunate that his intelligence allowed him to devise a strategy for communication. As the girl read the message, comprehension dawned upon her, and simultaneously, the baby extended his arms, eager for an embrace. The girl launched another attack on him, and it dawned on the baby that she had not yet learned to read. He evaded the attack, filled with concern that if anyone witnessed her assault, her fate would be sealed. As the traitor navigated the expansive corridors of the mansion, he carried a wooden box carefully in his hands. During a flashback, it is revealed that the boy's continued existence is solely because his father still finds him useful. Sprawled on the ground, the man expressed his gratitude to the young master for showing compassion and vowed to exert greater effort in his endeavors. The master mentioned that the grandfather was enraged and it was imperative for him to discover a method to appease the child. The man believed he had sold all his possessions to acquire a rare item at an auction. Suddenly, the sound of the young master's voice caught his attention, prompting him to question the events unfolding within the room. Upon opening the door, he stepped into the room and requested the presence of someone from the Liu family. As he entered, he observed them playfully chasing each other around the room. The baby, seizing an opportunity, fixed a dark, scheming look upon the man. The traitor was utterly baffled, unable to grasp any of the events unfolding around him. Then, the boy seized the servant's hand and twisted the knife. He employs his ability to control lightning to deliver a mild shock to the forehead of the girl with white hair. She collapses to the ground, and in a stunning turn of events, the baby grasps the knife from mid-air, flawlessly executing his intricate scheme. The baby, without any hesitation, pierced his own shoulder with the knife, which immediately became smeared with blood. The traitor was completely taken aback by what unfolded before him, letting out a scream of terror as he struggled to believe what he was seeing. Subsequently, the boy hurled the blood-stained knife in the direction of the man who was observing him. The unfortunate man managed to grasp the weapon as it sailed through the air, but he became paralyzed with fear, uncertain of his next move. Startled, he let the box he was holding fall to the ground. The young hero inhaled deeply, steeling himself for the grand performance ahead. Shortly thereafter, he began to cry loudly over the girl who had fainted on the rug. In a state of utter desperation, the man clutched the blood-stained knife. Upon hearing the noise, the grandfather and his companions rushed over to investigate the source of the commotion. The elderly man and his son gazed solemnly at the unfolding scene. The young child continued to cry, seeking solace by leaning against the servant in a way that suggested his protective embrace. In a fit of anger, the grandfather directed an accusatory finger towards the traitor, alleging that he had attempted to harm his grandson. The man tossed the knife onto the floor and attempted to defend himself by asserting his innocence. The father, filled with disbelief and anger, strikes the boy for having the audacity to harm his son. In a frantic effort, he conveyed that the girl had assaulted the baby, prompting him to defend himself. The infant persisted in his wails as the betrayer, nose bleeding profusely, let out desperate screams. He made a solemn promise to the elder, assuring him of his honesty, yet it appeared that no one was convinced by his tale. The boy's father delivered another punch, furiously demanding to know the whereabouts of the gift. In a state of desperation, the man searched the floor for the gift he had lost amidst the chaos. The grandfather commended the young girl for safeguarding his grandson and instructed that she be escorted to a place where she could rest. The elderly man rested his hand on the young master's shoulder, causing him to stiffen. The elder's red eyes intensely glowed with rage as he glared at the young man. He claimed to have instructed his son in the art of dog-rearing, yet he nearly dashed the Liu family's aspirations. The group exited the room, leaving the traitor alone, kneeling on the floor, consumed by terror. As the man began to tremble, a cold sweat drenched him, driven by the terror of the unknown consequences that awaited him. Abruptly, the father of the baby shifted his gaze towards him, his eyes burning with intense loathing and disdain. He delivered a forceful kick, remarking that despite being given an opportunity, the other had still attempted to harm him. As the man attempted to clarify his situation, the master commanded that he be seized and thrown to the dogs as food. The small protagonist's plan had worked, and he finally exhaled a sigh of relief at the successful outcome. A wound marred the shoulder of the young boy as he gazed anxiously at the girl lying unconscious on the floor. At that moment, the butler came forward and expressed the urgency of taking the servant for immediate medical treatment. Panic surged through him as he recalled the message he had inscribed on the floor directly beneath her. The boy positioned himself protectively over the girl, shaking his head to signal to the man to not take her away. The staff member carefully lifted the young boy away from the girl who lay unconscious beneath him. Upon doing so, the butler gently returned the boy to his crib, his expression one of noticeable distress. As the man approached the servant with the intention of picking him up, he contemplated incapacitating him with an electric shock. Suddenly, a new idea sparked in his mind, and he turned his gaze toward the maid, contemplating a fresh strategy. The employee lifted the young girl, leaving behind a dark pool of blood on the floor of the bedroom. The sight of the servant, also genuinely wounded, left the protagonist in shock. The sight of the bloodstain on the girl's clothes left the butler equally astonished. The situation baffled the young girl, leaving her puzzled about how she could have sustained an injury. He leads her outside and commands that the young master's room be tidied up. Isolated in his crib, the boy breathed a sigh of relief, yet curiosity about the unfolding events lingered in his mind. He sets it aside, prioritizing more pressing matters at hand. He leapt from the crib, eager to embark on his next scheme. In the massage room, a unique oil blend was being concocted especially for his mother. The housemaid then gave the woman a soothing back massage. The boy's mother appeared quite calm, savoring a seldom-found moment of tranquility. The peaceful moment was abruptly interrupted as the young child's cry for milk startled her. He makes his way toward her, and she expresses frustration about his recurring presence and considerable hunger. The boy started to feed, and his mother expressed her frustration, questioning the duration of his feeding. He had to hasten his development in order to communicate and clarify everything to his servant.